Hi, I'm Liam Naden, and I've just been on the show with Kim Sorrelle, and this is one of the best podcasts I've been on. She's such a great host. Really, the conversation was not just a one-way, talk about someone's history, which we're all sick of hearing about. We really managed to get into the depth of, why we do what we do, why we have problems in our life, and some real solutions, I think, and Kim certainly facilitated some great depth about how to really create meaningful lives, which is what we're all looking to do. So I highly recommend that you check out Kim's podcast, because not just my episode, but all of them are great.
Welcome to the show. I am so happy you are here. You're going to be so happy you're here. I am Kim Sorrelle. I'm a writer. I'm a speaker. I just spoke at the UN last week. It was so fun. I get to do a lot of fun things in life, but my favorite thing to do is meet people, and I get to meet some of the most extraordinary people on the face of the earth, and today is no exception to that. Liam has done so much in his life. Talk about somebody who is on top of the mountain and then down in the deepest valley and back on top of the mountain again. And he helps people with relationships, which I think is such a big deal, and does so much to help so many people, and is in a whole different place than the first time he had riches and he had to build back up again. So resilience is a big thing. We're going to talk about a lot of things. So I just want to get going. And so I want to say, Liam, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kim. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, my pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, Liam, I want people to get to know you. You are an extraordinary man with a great story, and you live on a yacht. Like, we need to talk about that a little bit. But anyway, so I would love for you to tell us about 8-year-old Liam.
Well, I'm probably like many of the people watching or listening, or maybe not like people watching or listening. I was a very driven 8-year-old. My mother would say, or did say, I was very intense. And it's, I guess, a quality I've had throughout my life is that I've always wanted to be the best at what I was doing. Not necessarily better than anyone else, but just do it to the best of my ability. So I've never wanted to settle for just an ordinary life. And so when I was an 8-year-old, I was really adventurous and wanted to try lots of different things. And yeah, that's really been the flavor that's carried on from there.
So that spirit of adventure, that's something that has stuck with you?
Yeah, and not just the spirit of adventure, but it's inquiring how do you become the best at something, or how do you get the most out of life? That's really the question that many of us ask, isn't it? I want to have a great life. I don't just want to settle for something mediocre. How do I do that? How do I figure out how to really rise above and feel inside that I'm achieving my full potential? I think that's something so many of us are looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so true. How did you see that play out, like as a middle school student and a high school student? Because I think, so many things can be different when you're an adult, right? The way you look at things. But as a kid, to be that driven, to want to be to do the absolute best that you can do. I was like that too. Like whatever, like I'm at basketball practice, and I'm giving it everything I got, or studying, I'm giving it everything I got. I didn't want to settle for anything less. But I saw it kind of shift and change a little bit, how it was done, or the way I looked at it through the years. How did it look for you?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that we tend to do when we get older is we start analyzing more. And really, that's the opposite to the way we're naturally designed. If you think in the Bible, it says that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And it says, it tells you how to enter the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven was within you, and the only way to enter that kingdom of heaven is to be like little children. So what do little children do? Because I think what the Bible is telling us here is that the kingdom of heaven, which is within you, is you being your best. It is you reaching your full potential. It is reaching that state of abundance and flow where you just have this knowingness about yourself that you're living a wonderful life. That's the kingdom of heaven. And to achieve that, like little children, is what do little children do? They don't analyze. They don't try and figure stuff out all the time. They don't question. They don't ask themselves, is this the right thing I should be doing? Or how do I get to where I think I should go? What should my goals be? So what I noticed with my life is the older I got, the less adventurous I became, in the sense the less childlike I became, as so many people do, where you start second guessing yourself. But if I think back to when I was, but older than 8, when I was a teenager, I didn't do that. I thought of an idea and I thought, I really want to do that. And I was a musician for a while, and I played the cello and the organ and the piano and and I always wanted to be the best, not better than anyone else, as I said, but the best that I achieved my full potential with those things. And at school, academically, I wanted to do really well in all those things. So we've a lot, and I've more recently started to understand how our brain actually works, and we're designed to live like that. But so many of us have lost this ability to really just be spontaneous, just be in the moment, and trust, and if you like, have faith that we're going to do the right thing and the right things are going to show up. But that's actually the way we're designed to live. So I've been relearning that. I was forced to relearn that, actually, because I tried everything else. I tried all the analysis, going to all the seminars, learning all the techniques on how to achieve success, how to make money, how to, rewire your brain and do all these methods and techniques to achieve success. But I ended up losing everything, and it didn't help me. So when I moved back to this childlike approach and discovered that actually that is the way we're biologically designed to operate, that's when all the magic started happening again. The magic I had as a child when, I worked on something and it worked, and I loved what I was doing.
Yeah, wow. Oh, okay, that's a lot to unpack right there.
Yeah.
But it's so good. I love what you're saying, because it's so true. I mean, we have these great imaginations as kids. We come up with these incredible ideas. I mean, we can make a airplane out of a box. I mean, there, so many things that we dream about and think about and let ourselves, right, allow ourselves to dream about and think about, with kind of no limits. Like, as a child, you're not looking like, well, where's the ceiling? You're not looking for a no. You're just trying to figure out a yes. And as an adult, it can be the opposite of that. It can be
I think it's not, sorry to interrupt, but it's not even about having dreams. It's just about doing stuff. When you're a child, you go, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to jump off that bridge into the water, or I'm going to play this musical instrument. I'm just going to do it. And we've lost the understanding of how our brain is designed, that we are designed to be, we are instinctive beings. We're not thinking beings. And I can explain how I've come to that conclusion. But we overthink everything. We think we've got to have a dream and a goal and a plan. No, we don't. We just need to do stuff like we were as a kid. And we'll find we do the right things. We'll find we learn along the way the right things and the wrong things. We learn that way. That's how we're designed to operate, not with all of this analysis and, figuring out how to solve problems and things. You just do stuff. That's the natural way.
Wow, I love this, I have to say, because you're going back to really the root of life, right? And there's all these books that are written that are contrary to what you're saying, that are saying, well, you have to have these systems in place and you have to do it this way. And then if you say these words or you do this thing, whatever, then you're going to be successful. Follow this path, then you're going to be successful. And you see it time and time again that it really either doesn't work, or it only works if you're working 90 hours a week and giving up everything else in life to try to gain financial success or whatever success means to you. And so to bring it all the way back to, no, when you were a kid, you just did it, so just do it is, it sounds simple, but I would imagine for a lot of people, it's not so simple, because they've got to retrain what they've been thinking the last however many years.
Well, the reason it's that people don't do it, you're right, it's so simple, isn't it? But the reason people don't do it is they don't understand how it works. But if you think again back to Christian or any spiritual or religious teaching, what's the main thing it teaches? It teaches faith, to believe, to trust, to allow, not to be afraid. So what are all of these things? So on the one hand, we're told this is the way you're supposed to operate. But on the other hand, we're not trusting, we're not believing, we're not allowing, we're not letting go. We're trying to figure it all out before we do anything. And what I've done a bit of research quite a lot of research into the history of how humans are actually biologically designed to operate. And it's actually a total parallel with what it teaches in the Bible, that we're designed biologically as instinctive beings. The whole of the rest of nature operates on instinct, and we do too, or we're supposed to. But something happened, just to give you a little bit of interesting history here. If you look back into the history of the human species, humans have been around for about 300,000 years. And for the first 290,000 years, in other words, 97% of that time, we had none of the diseases we have now. We had no unhappiness. There was no war. There was none of all the problems we have today. And I know people say, well, hang on, what about those primitive cavemen who lived these horrible, short, brutal, horrible lives? That's actually not true. We've been told a complete lie about human history. So for 97% of our time, we operated in a way where we really did thrive at our best because we lived instinctively. And then about 12,000 years ago, we invented something and from that moment of that invention, everything went downhill. All of the health problems came along, wars, all of the divisions between people, where you get rulers, our lifespan actually dropped by about 5 years. We shrank in height. Our brains shrank by 11% on average. All of these problems start to show up, and they're the same problems that we're struggling with today. And the only reason we're struggling with these problems is we've moved away from the way we operated for 290,000 years, the way we were biologically designed, the way, if you like, it's described in the Bible, how we're supposed to live. We moved away from that because of one invention, and we've been struggling ever since. And so the key to understand, if you really want to get rid of problems, you have to start using your brain the way it's designed to make sure you don't have problems, that you don't actually struggle. It's possible. It's the way we're designed.
Okay, so unpack this for us, because I think everybody would want to live that way. You would think, I want to live that way. So how do you achieve that? And what is that one invention that shifted everything?
Well, here's the really shocking thing about what that invention is. What it was language, was words. Before that, we lived without language. And what that meant was we lived instinctively. So the human brain is designed to respond perfectly to everything that's happening in the present moment. So through your 5 senses, your brain shows you the right thing to do. However, once we started with language, once we started with words, we could tell stories. So instead of reacting to the present moment, we started reacting to something that doesn't exist and that never existed, but which we invented, the future or the past. So our brain became literally hijacked and overloaded, because instead of dealing with the present moment, now the brain was dealing with all these imaginary stories. And this is why we stay stuck. We're not responding to the present moment. We're not allowing our brain to show us exactly what we should be doing with our present circumstances. We're creating stories about it. And we're saying things like, well, I might have enough food to eat now, or enough money, but there might be a time in the future where I don't have enough money. So I need to earn more. I need to hoard food. And someone over there has got more than I have, and I could steal it off them or have a war with them to make sure that I'm safe, not safe right now, but safe in the future. So you see, this is what language does. We have the ability now, if you like, to create stories about life. And we're no longer living life. We're no longer responding and interacting with life in the present moment. We're off somewhere else. Our brain is telling stories about, you need to plan for the future. You need to have goals. You need to do all of these things because something bad might happen. And the brain's not designed to do that. It's designed to make sure. This is why there's so much emphasis we hear about being in the moment, being in the flow. What is it? It's having faith. Again, it's just trusting and knowing that you're going to do the right thing. The right thing is going to happen. Everything's going to be perfect. So you don't need to think about the future. It even says in the Bible, give no thought for tomorrow. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Do not worry about what you shall eat, drink, or wear. It's all going to be provided for you. And if you look around nature, that's exactly how nature works. Nature's not struggling. If a bird wants some food, it finds some food. It's, living on a boat, I see this all the time. It became so clear to me living in nature just how perfect everything is instinctively. And this is how we were. So we've got into this trap of living life through stories, not actually living life directly. So if we really want to get our brain back to working that way, I mean, we can't get rid of language because we already have it, and it has some powerful uses. But we need to start coming back to this idea of living instinctively rather than through our thoughts. Because the thing is, your thoughts are never going to solve your problems. Think of how many people now, how much information we've got, how many solutions to every single problem you think could possibly imagine that you would have. There's a million solutions out there, yet everybody's stuck. Everybody's saying they're not happy and that they have this feeling inside that, they want to be on top of their life and not have problems. It's because we're creating these stories all the time. We can never be free of this voice inside us going, yes, but things might be going well, but you need to prepare for this or prepare for that, or something else might go wrong. It's just not in the brain. As I say, it was never designed to do that. It's not the natural way.
So interesting. So interesting. Because really fear is a big thing, right? And what you fear that could happen usually doesn't happen, whatever the statistic is on that. But some people live in that, and fear can just paralyze you. And so if you instead are living instinctually and not worrying, not fearing things that may or may not happen in the future, that's a whole different mindset, a whole different way to be.
Yeah, because what is fear? Fear is the opposite of faith, isn't it? Fear is, and it's a story. You're not in the present moment thinking, wow, what an amazing life I have, an amazing world I live in, and really experiencing the present moment. You're off somewhere else worrying about what you think might happen. So, but this just doesn't make any sense. And one of the ways we know it doesn't make sense is we've all had that experience of something really going well without us thinking about it. Maybe we're doing something and we're just caught up in how wonderful the moment is, or being with someone that we love. And it's what happens in those moments is there's no stories. We're not talking about anything. We're not describing anything, either usually silently in our heads. We're just experiencing. And if you think of something like love, how many people through history have tried to understand what love is, to describe it, to use words to describe what love is? It can't be done. If someone asks you or asks me, what is love? We couldn't come up with words. Yet we all know what it is. We don't understand it. We know it. And that's a huge difference. And we're all busy trying to understand things. We're never going to understand the truth. You can never understand love. You can never understand this infinite intelligence that makes everything work, that makes your body, that makes all of the atoms synchronized together to bring this sense of reality. We're never going to be able to understand that, but we can know it. We can experience it. And we do that in this present moment through the instrument we've been given, through our 5 senses in our brain, to have that feeling. And that's the feeling we're all looking for. We all want that sense of knowingness. We don't want to just understand stuff. We want to know, yes, I experience love. I experience the best and the greatness of myself. That's what we're looking for. We'll never find it through language, through words. That's the trap, if you like, trying to do that.
Yeah. Words are pretty limiting. There are things that are really tough to describe and really wrap your head around. Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up love, because love is the thing, like the thing that we all want, the thing that we desire, the thing that we need, the thing that drives us, how we love or what love is to us. I did this year where I dedicated a year to figuring out the true meaning of love, because I found what you're talking about. You put 12 people in a room and you say, what is love? You get 12 different answers. And I thought,
13.
well, yeah, right, exactly. But what is it really? What is it really? And one thing that I discovered about love is that what makes it harder to describe or just something that is there is the fact that it's who you are. In John, it says that God is love, not that God loves, but God is love. And so often we think love's an emotion, or love can come and go, right? It's a transaction. I give love to get love, or we're taught all these things about love that have nothing to do with love whatsoever, because love is who you are. We're created in the image of God, and love is who God is. So love is who you are. And then how you walk it, talk it, deal with it is completely up to you. And one of the most important things I believe about love is being in the moment, being here, right now. When you love, you give yourself fully to somebody, whoever it is, your friend, somebody at the grocery store. You give yourself fully to them. So that means your entire attention is on them and not thinking about tomorrow or the meeting you have later, or are you going to have food, or what's for dinner, any of those things. But you're completely engaged and completely in the moment. And I think that can be a really difficult thing for people to do, because we've been taught so differently. And because our lives are so busy, we think that we have to be thinking about things, but thinking about things now that aren't going to happen for hours from now, even things that are real, like you're going to have to make dinner later, thinking about that now while you're with somebody, instead of giving them your full attention, is you're robbing them and you're robbing yourself, because it's not like you're going to get a pan out while you're talking and start cooking. So, be in the moment and let dinner happen when it's time for it to happen. But it seems like that's such a difficult thing for people to do. Like, I had to practice and practice. I stunk at this. I was horrible. I thought I could be thinking about a million things and be fully engaged at the same time, and learned that it's impossible. And when I started to live in the moment, my life changed completely. And I heard things I never would have heard before. I saw things I never would have seen before, because I think you miss so much when you're doing the opposite of what we should be doing, the opposite of living instinctually, because your mind is focused where it shouldn't be.
Absolutely. I mean, really, we have two choices. We either experience life or we tell stories about life. And unfortunately, for the last 12,000 years since language has been around, we've all been, we haven't been around 12,000 years personally, but for our entire life, we've been told that stories are how you get through your life. You have to figure stuff out. You have to plan and work things out, and have lots, and you have to learn a lot, and, do all this analysis. That's the way we've been taught that life works. But it doesn't work like that anywhere else in nature. And it didn't work for us for most of our human history, when we were so much better off than we are now. And it doesn't work, as you've just explained, when you start to experience the moment and you let go of everything. And I'm not talking about, this isn't sort of some woo-woo, sit on a mountaintop idea. This is biology. This is how the brain is designed to work, how it worked, took 200,000 years to perfect itself through nature, to make sure that this is how humans were designed to thrive in the world and eliminate problems and dangers and survive for the longest by operating in this way. And as you say as well, when you experience this, there's something about it that's different, and you can't explain it because it's beyond stories and about words. But when you slip into this, you see life in a different way, and you experience life in a different way. And that's what the Bible says is trust and faith and belief. It's not a religious concept. It's a biological concept. It's trying to tell you this is the way you're biologically designed to operate. And if and you can't blame God or me or anybody else if you have problems in your life when you're not using the machine the right way, the way it was designed to. And I'm telling you how to use it. I'm telling you to let go and have faith. And that means as well, and this is shocking to people as well, means getting rid of all of your expectations, all of your goals, all of the things that you think you need to be happy. You mentioned earlier that I'm living on a yacht. I've been living as a nomad for the last 15 years. In the last 10 years, I've been sailing around on my own yacht. This is actually my fourth yacht in 10 years. And I have the privilege of talking to wonderful people like you and sharing this quite different information about how the brain works and how we're biologically and instinctively designed to operate. Now, if you'd said to me 15, 20 years ago, that's going to make you live your ultimate life, is sailing around the world and on your own yacht and teaching about how the brain works, I would have thought that's utterly crazy. That would never have happened if I had goals in place, because that's the thing that really changed after I lost everything. I stopped setting goals. I stopped having expectations. And I just said, I give up trying to figure out how to make my life work, because everything I tried, all of the affirmations and the goal setting and the, positive thinking and all those different techniques, that didn't work, because here I am homeless with nothing. So I'm going to give up that and just say, I'll see what shows up, and then act on everything. And that's what I did. I just took one step at a time. And this is where it turned out to be. And I could never have figured this out. And it's funny, I've talked to successful people, made a lot of money or whatever, and said, how did you get to where you are? Really? How did you become so successful? And if you dig deep, their answer is always, I don't really know. It just sort of happened. I took lots of action. I did this, and then something else showed up, and I did that, and then I acted on that, and then I made a mistake here, or something didn't go away. People, our lives do not operate on this grand scheme that we've figured out in advance. It operates moment by moment. There's something else going on. And if we really allow that intelligence, that instinctive part of us to do its job, we're going to end up in exactly the right place for us. It's probably not going to be where we think we should be or think we need to be, because we don't really know. We end up where we're supposed to be. And that's really the key, I think.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things that are so key to what you're saying that are so important. One is that when you're doing that, if you live that way, just moment by moment, follow your instincts, right? Follow your guts. I think one thing we've gotten away from is realizing that we do have this intuition, this inner knowing what to do next, what the next good decision is going to be when something comes your way. And somehow we've suppressed that and thought, no, don't listen to that, and call it women's intuition, or we call it something else. Well, it's for men and women, and it's something that's for real. And so that is where faith comes in. And, pray about it if you're not sure which way to go. But that's, you should be able to make decisions based on that. And I love what you said about talking to business people and what did they do? What are their things? And that it wasn't, well, I made this 5-year plan. And in my 5-year plan, this is what I was doing in a year. This is what I was doing in 2 years. But I just followed my gut, basically. I just followed my instincts, and the company grew and things happened. And this is so good. Like what you have uncovered is for everyone, everywhere, and so valuable and so opposite of pretty much everything on the shelves right now. So
the problem is the opposite. I tried it all. It doesn't work. Let's be honest here. I say to people often, if they want some advice or help from me, one of the questions I ask is, how good are you at achieving your goals? Firstly, do you have any goals? They say, oh, yes, I've got my goals and I've got my plan and I know exactly what I want. Well, I know straight away that they're on the wrong track, because none of us know what we want. We can never know what we want. Occasionally, we might get an idea and it strikes us in a different place, and we say, like when we meet the person we marry, for instance, when there's something in us that tells us this person is the one you want to spend your life with. But most of the time, when we think we know what we want, we're just telling stories and using words to try and come up with some answer to a question of, what do I want? How can I make myself happy? Thinking that we can find that answer. So really, the point is that you can't. It's when you give up all of this stuff, or what I was going to say. Sorry, lost track for a second. There was, I say to them, sorry, okay, you've got your goals. Now, what percentage of your goals do you ever reach? Is it 100%? Because if goal setting really worked as an idea, everybody should hit 100% of their goals, shouldn't they? I mean, imagine going to a surgeon and saying, what's your success rate on heart operations? And he said, well, it's only 1%. You want someone who's got 100% before you entrust them, before you think it works, whatever they do. So that's the same with goals. And I say, is it 100%? No. Is it 90, 80? And the number keeps going down, and it normally gets around to about 2 or 3%. Yeah, I'm working on all my goals, but if I'm really honest, I'm not really achieving any of them. And we think everybody out there is achieving all their goals and making all, we go to a seminar and someone up there, I achieved my goals. It's not reality. And we're all afraid to admit it, that it doesn't work. And one of the reasons we're afraid to admit it is we don't know what else to do. But the opposite is the most biologically, again, 200,000 years of human history and the rest of nature has taught us how you achieve goals. And the way you achieve goals is not to have a goal. It's to allow your instinct to show you the very next step. That's the most biologically energy efficient way of doing anything. So that's the way we're designed. Nature is designed around biological efficiency, getting the most out of the minimum amount of energy expended. So to get to where you are supposed to be, the most efficient way is your brain just to show you the next step, and you just do it, not thinking about it, analyzing, wondering what you should do. You just do it. Now, that doesn't mean acting impulsively, because that usually comes from fear. Anyway, you do something hoping it's going to work out. But if you just act mindfully and just keep taking the next action, not trying to overanalyze everything, then that's where your life opens up, and all these magical things start happening to you. And you go, wonder how that happened, or where did that person come from? And you realize it's all part of this instinctive intelligence that is there to make sure you thrive, that you have the best life possible, along with the rest of nature. That's how it's set up.
Wow. Okay, so that all sounds so good. And I believe what you're saying is so valuable, so true, and the way we should be living. But at the same time, or not but also at the same time, there's a lot of talk about manifestation, or people doing vision boards each year, or things like that are definitely planning for the future kind of things, or thinking that, speak it and it'll come to being, or whatever. How does what you're saying fit into some of the stuff that you're hearing and some of the stuff that people are currently doing?
Well, it makes me a little bit sad, if you like, that, and no disrespect to everyone who's teaching these things, really. And I don't want to sound like I'm critical or whatever, but I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding about how we actually create the results in our life. And it comes back to this thing that your body, your brain, who you are, is designed to respond perfectly to this moment. It's not designed to respond to some future story. And the problem with vision boards and all of those things is we're trying to impose on ourselves a picture of what we think that we need. But as I said, we can never know what we really want. I've worked with lots of people. You mentioned before we started about relationships. I've helped a lot of people in there who've had relationship problems. And a lot of the time it's about letting go of the fear around your relationship, including the end of a relationship. Many people are stuck in a relationship because they're terrified that if they don't fix that relationship, they're going to end up alone and lonely, or no one's going to love them again, or they're going to, never find anyone as good, or they're going to have all these regrets. So they have all of these fears that keep them stuck. And what are the fears? They're just stories about what might happen if what they think needs to happen doesn't. In other words, if their relationship ends. But so many people contact me when I help them get over this fear thing and start acting instinctively. Firstly, that relationship usually gets a lot healthier. Now, that doesn't mean it stays together, because the people, if they're honest and healthy people, it might no longer or not have ever been the right relationship. Or, as I say, it might be just for a while. So things become healthier in that relationship for whatever it is, but very often those relationships won't last. And people say, well, that's terrible. You obviously have a very bad success rate when it comes to helping relationships. That's not the point. The point is, will those two people end up in the best place for them, the place where they're thriving, not where they're struggling trying to fix a relationship? And so many people contact me and say, Liam, when I finally got this idea, when I finally started to live instinctively rather than trying to analyze and figure everything out, things started to happen in a magical way, and I stopped having expectations. And where I am now, I never healed that relationship, but I realized that it wasn't meant to be healed. I couldn't see it at the time because my head was so full of fear and stories and analysis. But when I stepped back, I could see it wasn't meant to be. And now I'm with somebody else, and I'm so much happier. And if I'd only known that this is the way we're supposed to live, I would have tried it a lot sooner rather than spend all that time struggling, trying to figure it out, trying to make things work. Again, nature doesn't work on struggle and difficulty. Imagine a river, the water, this is a common example, but the water going down a stream and gets to a rock and it tries to force its way through. It just goes around it. All of nature is built on least resistance, that efficiency of energy thing again. So this is where it just comes to being in this state where you're not trying to force things to happen, and you're not wondering whether what is going to happen is going to be good or bad. It's going to be perfect. Not necessarily what you expect, and you might have a lot of things that you have to unravel, or experiences that are unpleasant. But usually experiences are unpleasant because we've got some story about it. Oh, I'm having problems in my relationship, and my wife wants a divorce, whatever it is. It's the story about it. It's not the fact that they've said they want a divorce, because you could go and find someone else, or it might be or whatever. It's not a problem really, but you create all the problems through your thoughts, through your words, through your language. You stop acting instinctively. It's such a more efficient and better way to live, but when it comes down to, unfortunately, all the goal setting, the manifestation is trying to force something to happen, when you're saying, essentially what you're saying is, I need that to happen for me to be happy. And that's not the way. We don't know what we need to be happy. What you need to be happy is that feeling, is when your life is working, is when you're in the moment, when you're enjoying what you're doing right now, when you're living instinctively without all these. What you're looking for is freedom from all the stories and all the noise that keeps going on in your head, telling you need to do something else and you can't be happy and you have to figure out this, and these are all the
Yeah.
things that might happen. Sorry, I
Yeah.
went on a
That's
bit there.
so true. That's so true. Yeah, expectations, man, you keep bringing up that word, but it's so true. It's our expectations that really get us in trouble.
Yeah.
I had early on in my marriage, I had this moment with my husband, who I adored, by the way. He was wonderful, died several years ago, but we had a great marriage for most of it. First couple of years, I was a pain in the neck. After that, I learned how to actually be in a relationship. But I had this moment where I created this wonderful dinner, his favorite foods, and candles on the table. Couldn't wait for him to come home. The apartment's clean. I'm dressed in a little something slinky, whatever. Couldn't wait. And then I expected him to walk in the door and go, honey, you look so great. He didn't do that. He just came in like any other day and sat down to eat. And he never said, honey, the food's so good. Or, gosh, I can't believe you did this for me. He didn't say any of those things that I was expecting him to say. And so I was getting angrier and angrier as dinner was going on. And so I practically threw dessert at him because I was so angry by the time that time came. And he said, is something wrong? I'm like, is something wrong? I did all this for you and you haven't said a thing. You haven't said this, you haven't said that. He said, wait a minute. He said, I can't read your mind. First of all, I don't know that you're expecting me to say those things. Secondly, I've done nothing wrong. It's your expectations that have gotten you in trouble. And when he told me that, it made me so mad. I was like, he's not my father. Like, he's trying to correct me somehow. Who does he think he is? But when I simmered down and thought about it, he was spot on. Our expectations mess us up. They mess us up so much. And so if you're living in that, having these expectations of what your future should look like, or how your spouse should act even, or how they should respond to something you've done, or whatever, you're not communicating anything. You're just in your head expecting something to happen. Man, you're just setting yourself up for heartache and misery. And so I love it. Talk about that. Yeah.
And none of that would exist if you didn't have language, because you couldn't have expectations. We lived totally in the present moment. We responded to our environment. We found food when we needed it, and we ate the right food. It's only 12,000 years ago we started eating the wrong foods because of our fears, because of our stories, and created all these health problems. Before then, there's no such thing as osteoporosis or cancer or heart disease or tooth decay. The fossil remains they've shown of skeletons, the teeth were absolutely perfect. If someone, our immune systems were so much better. We were healthier. I know this is the opposite of what we're taught, from the dinosaur cavemen days, but none of that's actually factually true. So it's only when we have, and when you think about most of the problems we have in our life are not about what's happening, they're about our expectations, about the stories that we're telling ourselves in our head. This shouldn't be like this. They shouldn't act that way. Things should be different to what they are. And the problem is with that, it's not so much things should be different to what they are, because they might not be quote unquote perfect at the moment, although they actually are when you see that from an instinctive perspective. So it's not so much that, it's just that when you have no perception of what is right or isn't right, when you're stuck in stories, when you're thinking something should be different. And we've set up life with this game that will never win. Everything has to happen the way we expect, in the way it expects, in every single moment, and then we'll be happy. That's never going to happen. And we can never fix everything that our brain is telling us is wrong, that the stories are telling us. It needs to be a different way. As you said, they need to act in a different way. We're setting ourselves up for failure. And look at our society, unfortunately, despite all the information and all the solutions and everything and all the information, we've never had more problems. Really, the suicide rate in the Western world is 10 times what it was 100 years ago. 10 times. So people saying, well, it's great we've got all this stuff and all this technology. It's come at a huge price, at a huge cost.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, because we're in a whole different place. And yes, and I think about things like anxiety and depression and whatever probably has a whole lot to do with expectations and fear and expectations. And yeah, and the story,
everything.
Yeah, and the stories are stories that we're taught, right? The stories that we're taught throughout our life that we think things should be a certain way. So because we have this history of however many years we've lived, how many days we've lived up until today, how do you shift your brain to go from I'm living through the stories I've been told and the things I'm supposed to do according to the smart people in the world, whatever. How do you make the shift to no, I'm here today. Today's a day. Let's celebrate today.
It's really, really simple. It's as simple as going to a dietitian and saying, I'm really overweight. How do I lose weight? And I say, it's dead simple. Just stop eating the wrong foods, eat the right foods, and do exercise. What else do I need to tell you? But of course, most people don't do that, do they? Because simple is different from easy. They're two different things. So quite simply, and this is something I help people work through, the way I teach it is the first thing to do is just recognize you're spending your whole life telling stories. You've got these words going around in your head. And whenever you feel any sort of anxiety or frustration or, and we get this all this time, this voice coming into our head, even when we're happy, we just have this anxiety, and we certainly do it when we react to something, to a situation. You don't need to change that story. You don't need to say, right, I need to have positive thoughts. I need to be grateful. I need to change my, figure out what I'm saying or thinking, and I need to change it. You don't need to do any of that, because all that does is keep you stuck in the story trap. I call it the story trap of telling stories. You're telling a different story. You're still not interacting with the present moment. You're still not living instinctively. So the key is not to try and change your stories. It's to recognize you're telling stories whenever you feel this discomfort, if you like, or any other time. Most of the time we're wandering around telling stories. We're not, we can go for a walk. I've been guilty of this. You do a beautiful walk and you get to the end of it and you think, I don't remember any of it. I don't think I actually experienced it. I was too busy thinking about all these things I want to do and things I need to do and all that. So just stop and say, I'm telling a story. Whatever the story is, I'm just not going to tell the story anymore. I'm just going to drop it. I'm going to come back to the present moment. And most importantly, from that, I'm just going to do the next thing. I'm not going to ask myself, what should I do now? But I'm just going to do something. And usually it's something small, but that's how we move from thinking-based living, story-based living, to instinctive, successful living. And just as an aside to that, people say that's really difficult to do. The funny thing is, most of the time we live totally through instinct anyway. We don't live through thought. We blink our eyes, we nod our head, we scratch our nose, we look around, we do something. We're not thinking all of these things before we do them. We can see how wired we are for instinct. That's how we live for most of the time. But when we mess things up is when we start to attach a story to something, usually something that hasn't happened, and then we act on the story, not what's actually going on. So a good example might be an argument between a husband and a wife. And again, this is a common thing I've worked with people. When you think about when you're having an argument, a little bit what you're saying with your husband, you're feeling this tension between you. What are you actually doing? You're not actually in the moment, in the present moment, having an argument. What you're doing is you're telling stories about what you think should happen in that moment, and you're trying to change it. So you're saying things to yourself like, they shouldn't say that. They need to understand what I'm saying. They need to take my point of view into account. We need to fix this problem and get over this miscommunication, because if we don't, then we're going to continue to have problems in our marriage and we're going to have regrets. So because we've got all those stories, we're not responding to the present moment. We're not doing the thing that would actually get rid of the argument. We're just carrying the argument on, and we're getting, louder and louder, and now shouting. And how many times do we come to the end of an argument when finally we just walk away from it and we think, what a waste of time that was. It didn't actually get me anywhere. It's like going to counseling. I spend an hour talking and nothing's changed. I've spent all this time talking about our problems. Nothing has changed. We have all these arguments, all these discussions, and nothing ever changes. Of course it doesn't change, because you're not dealing with the problem. You're not dealing with the situation. The situation is your connection to that person in the present moment. That's it, without expectation. So this is where it's simple. We do it without realizing it most of the time, but we need to start being conscious about making this shift from, and the shift really comes from understanding, this is what I try and help people with, understanding that actually this is the way you're supposed to live. This is the way the body works. It's a bit like if you cut your finger and it was bleeding. Now, you wouldn't look at it and say, well, I need to go to a heart surgeon and get my finger chopped off to fix it. You know how it works, and you're not worried about it. You don't, spend your time visualizing healing your finger. It just happens. So we need to, when we understand that we're instinctive beings, we're not thinking beings. Thinking hijacked the brain. We're instinctive beings. And the more we act instinctively, the more things work out brilliantly.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I would imagine for a lot of people, that's a hard shift.
Of course. That's what I said. This is so simple. But what makes it easier is understanding it. When you understand something, you're more likely to make a shift. And then the other thing is just actually doing it a little bit at a time. You don't need to change your marriage instantly, but you can do this in little things and start to experience instinctively just that feeling. It's called, there's a word for it, being in the flow, being in the zone. We all have that experience where things are just clicking into place. And we think, oh, I wish it was like this all the time. That is the way we're biologically designed to be all of the time, actually. So it's just once you get a concept of this about, again, this is faith, isn't it? The problem with faith, most people think that they have a life of faith. They don't. They have a life of hope. And they're saying, God, please give me this to take me out of my pain. And I have faith that you will. That's not faith. That's hope. Faith is saying, God has got my back. Everything's working out perfectly. Everything is the way it's supposed to be. And all I'm supposed to do is just take the next step and live instinctively, not worry about anything. Again, it tells us, don't worry, don't stress, have faith, believe, let go. It'll all happen the right way. So, and once you start doing that and you start seeing things, shift, then it gathers momentum. And you look back and you say, well, I know now why I've had so many problems in my life. How many problems do we have that we create ourselves? We say, oh, I should never have married that person. I'm guilty of that one. I should never have employed that person in my business. I should never have started that business. I'm guilty of those ones. I'm guilty of all of them, probably. We say, why did I do that? And we spend so much of our time trying to undo problems that if we listen to that voice that you mentioned at the beginning, intuition, which is intelligence speaking through us instinctively, if we listen to that and just acted on that, we'd solve most of our problems anyway.
That's so true. That's so true. Get rid of the stories and just let your instincts guide you and be in today. Be in today. So many people, I think, it can be so easy to lose time because, when you're so focused on something that's going to be happening in the future, or you're letting your happiness, letting something that you think is going to happen in the future determine your happiness, then, man, you're robbing yourself of today. Like, you can be happy today. There's not a reason to not have that happiness right here, right now, instead of.
Yeah. The unfortunate thing with language, when it came along, and not every culture or civilization took on this change, but most did. And what we ended up doing as a society, as a species, we actually sacrificed the present moment for the future. We stopped living, and we were, one of the things that happened was people started to work a lot harder. Instead of working about 2 or 3 hours a day, getting the food and what you needed, people started working 12 hours a day. They started being told what to do. And they're not just working 12 hours a day, doing horrible work, like, toiling away in the fields all day. Before that, we were nomadic hunters. When we needed food, we found food. It was plentiful. It was easy. But then we had this idea that we couldn't be happy, we couldn't trust that there was food in the present moment and every moment. We created a future of scarcity. So we said to ourselves, we need to plant crops so that next year I will have some food. And I'm prepared to work 12 hours a day out in the boiling sun and the freezing rain to make sure that there's food for me next year. That's what language did. Before that, we didn't know there was a next year. There isn't a next year. Even Einstein said that. There is no such thing as time. Time is an illusion. There's only the present moment. It's only language and words that gives us a perception that there is time, and that our brain starts to say, right, got all these potential problems, an endless, infinite number of potential problems. I need to fix all of those before I can allow you to be safe. You're not safe when all these potential problems are out there. It's all just an illusion, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. That is so true. I think, too, something that I'd love to hear you talk about is the fact that it doesn't mean that you're just gonna forage for food every day. We live in 2025, and there are grocery stores, and there are crops to be had, and there are, there is whatever there is, refrigerators, whatever. And so it's but that things will happen, your success will come, things will, whatever that means, which that seems to be an illusion too, right? Like goals can be an illusion, or success. What does that mean? If you get to a certain point, then all of a sudden that shifts your life, and it's like, well, nobody ever seems to get to that point.
Exactly.
So, right. But so living in the moment, living instinctually, doesn't mean you're not going to have the things that you need. Probably more the opposite of that.
Well, one of the things people say was, does that mean I just sit in a corner and do nothing and then things all come to me? You actually take far more action when you live instinctively. You're far more productive because you're not judging anything. I really noticed this when I became homeless and lost everything. And I started again and I had no expectation. I just did a whole lot of different things and see what stuck. And I didn't have any and they're all strange things. It was just the next thing that showed up. That's an idea. I'll try that. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't need to know. So you actually become far more productive, and you take far more action because you're not being held back by this analysis and fear. How many people do we know? And we say you should, and we can see very clearly for other people what they should do to improve their life, but we're not so good at seeing it for ourselves. And that's a function of how the brain works, but probably haven't got time to talk about why that is, but it's a biological thing. But, instead of, we can see what someone else should do to improve their life. And what do they say? Oh, I'm not sure. I need to think about that one before I do anything, because I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm afraid it might not be the right thing. I need to work out how to do it, or whether it's the right thing to do, or whether it's going to lead me to where I think I should be. So we're wasting all of that energy and we're not doing anything. And we see this with people who are overthinkers. They don't actually do very much, and they achieve, unfortunately, even less. And they're never happy either, because we're stuck in this story trap of thinking rather than just acting. And it's so liberating just to do stuff, not think about where it's going to go. Same in a relationship. Just say things. And people go, oh, I might say the wrong thing. That's another trap, another story, isn't it? Fear of saying the wrong thing. And as you found out with your husband, what is the wrong thing? If they get offended, it's their story, which is, it's nothing about what you've said. It's about the story they're running about what they think you should have said. And that's the most liberating thing, I've found in my own relationship as well, is that whenever one person is a little bit annoyed or angry or whatever, realize it's actually nothing to do with the other person. It's to do with your own story. And my partner and I are very good at this now about, recognizing when it's your responsibility what you think. It's nothing to do with me at all. And that frees you up to be in a relationship without expectation, but you just enjoy the moment. And if you think about when people first get into a relationship, that's what makes it so joyful and fun, is you don't have expectation. You're not worried about whether it's going to be, you're going to do the right thing or the wrong thing. You just have fun. Again, that's the way we're supposed to be in our relationships, in our life, all the time.
I
It's
love
the way
that.
we're designed.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. And you talk about it with such conviction and knowing that I know what you're saying is true. It's so good. It's so good. And I think too, often people think, well, yeah, but what's my purpose? You know, how do I find my purpose? And that can drive them crazy. Like, what is my next thing? You know, what am I supposed to be doing? And what I've come to realize, and I'd love your take on this, is that your purpose, anybody, your purpose is to be fully you. Just be 100% who you're created to be. Just be you.
Yeah.
Don't try to be anything else, but just be you, which would include being you right now. And instead of thinking that there's something that you're missing, you're not missing anything unless you're missing who you are, unless you're not realizing who you are and how important today is.
Whenever you say you're missing something, what are you doing? You're telling another story. You're saying, oh, I haven't found my purpose. Oh, I could be a lot better than this. I don't know what better is, but if I don't fix this and work it all out, I'm going to look back with regret on my life because I'm going to have missed out on really living. But everybody's missing out on really living because nobody's really living in the moment, and so many people, when they get to the end of their life, they say, so much of my time I didn't live in the moment. I didn't actually experience what I was experiencing. So we have to let go of this idea of finding our purpose, because that's an expectation. That's a story, which has attached to it all these ideas. Well, I need to figure it all out, and then when I've figured it all out, then I'll feel good. I'll feel like I've achieved it. You'll never figure it out. Take away that expectation. You'll never understand it, but you will know it. You'll know when you're living your purpose, just like we talked about with love. You'll never understand love. Truth, if you like to call it that, what is true is infinite. There's an infinite intelligence that runs everything, but we can't understand it. We'll never understand it. We'll never understand love. We'll never understand our purpose. We'll never understand gratitude. We can only experience those things. So once we stop trying to understand them and focus instead on experiencing them, which we can only do when we get rid of the words and the language and come back to instinct, that's when it all makes sense. But you can't explain it. You just go, I just know my purpose. I can't explain what it is. And the minute you try and explain what it is, you limit it. You limit yourself. Imagine trying to explain love. You limit it whenever you try and explain it. You mentioned it much earlier on when you said, love could mean this or love could mean that. That's all limitations on what love actually is.
It's so true. Love is just too big to put into words. And yeah, it is something you experience for sure. And something that.
And what does it say in the Bible? God is love. Mm-hmm. So what do God and love both have in common? They're both infinite. So How can you define, the minute you try and put infinite into a box, it's not infinite anymore. So therefore it's not true. It's not real.
Yeah, absolutely. So true. Oh my gosh, this has been incredible. You are incredible. I love that you figured this out for the rest of us, and that you're helping people to figure it out. I just love this episode. I think everyone should listen to it and pass it on, because and follow you, Liam. And so how can people get in touch with you? What do you want people to do from here?
Well, if they come to my website, which is liamnaden.com, just my name, Liam Naden, there's a lot of stuff there and about how, explaining this in more detail. And if anyone wants to reach out and say they've got a question about this or something, some clarity, my email is liam@liamnaden.com. or liamnaden@gmail.com. Just send me an email. I'd love to hear from people and see if, we all need to be on this journey together of understanding more about who we really are. It's a bit like the emperor's new clothes, everybody running around thinking, oh, well, I need to set goals and I need to manifest and I need to know my purpose. But deep down, I hope one of the things I've done, is got people to think this actually makes a bit of sense. That on a knowing level, not just a logical explanation, but there's something about it. I know this is right. I know that we're not supposed to live in this struggle. And I know how I've been creating so much struggle in my life through all these ideas and expectations and thoughts and and just not living in a free, instinctive way. So if people would like more information or want to talk to me about it, Liam Naden at Gmail, I'd love to hear from people.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. And your website is great. You've got some resources on there and you talk about some different things. And so yes, go to the website. We'll have all of that in the show notes. But I encourage everybody to do that. I mean, what an incredible way to live the way we're really designed and supposed to live. And what a better way than the struggle that we all put ourselves in because of the story we tell ourselves and because of the expectations that mess us up. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Kim, for having me. And I hope people get this idea that, this isn't about taking away anything from your life. This isn't about saying, but what if bad things happen? If I let go, bad things are going to happen. And if I just take lots of little action, I'm going to do all the wrong things. That's not going to happen, but you have to get over that threshold into if you like, the faith, the real faith of just allowing and knowing that it's all going to work out fine, rather than telling yourself a story about what might go wrong. And when you do that, if you're prepared to do that and have it's not really courage, it's more understanding to do that, magic happens. I mean, and I'm not just saying this because I've worked this all out in theory. This is the way it happened for me. I did all of the goal setting and the meditation, the spirituality and all that, and I'm not knocking those things, but they just didn't work. And because they're missing I think the point that we're designed instinctively. Everything, just like your body works perfectly if you let it, this way your life's supposed to be. It's all set up perfectly.
That's so good. That's so good. What a note to end on, because this has been so great. Thank you, thank you, thank you again. I so appreciate it, and thank you everybody for being with us today. Pass this on. Like this is huge. Like it's such a mind shift, but what a great mind shift. Such a life-changing thing that can't help but rock your world, can't help but change things for you and your occupation and what you do in your day-to-day and in every relationship that you have. So thanks again, Liam, for being here. And thank you all for being here. And I just pray that until we see each other again, that you keep your heart open and you live your love loud.